and welcome to the Stateside Soccer Show. My name is Jordan. With me, as always, is Logan. How are you today, Logan?
Jordan, we have MLS. It is so back. Every time I say MLS is back, I think of the poor tournament that has been discontinued. But Jordan, we have
Yes, the
soccer
one-off.
this week. Yeah. So
Yeah, not just this week. We have some tomorrow.
yeah,
CCC kicks off. Was going to kick off for Kansas City and Miami. That's getting pushed back due to some weather concerns tomorrow. So I think that's getting moved to maybe the week. No, it can't be the weekend. But it's getting moved. It's not on the official schedule yet on the MLS website, but yeah, we're doing our season previews. I think we said how we were going to structure it last time, and that proved false because of things outside of our control. So I think we're going to try to get it all done today, at least recording wise. If it's a very long episode, I might end up cutting these for people listening, but I think we're going to start with the Eastern Conference. We're going to go through the teams. Big transfers out, big transfers in, changes to the club at all, if we're talking about coaches or whatever, and then we can kind of give our verdict on their offseason, where we think they're going to go this season. And then at the end of the episode, we will share our Western Conference and Eastern Conference tables, which I was kind of agonizing over for a bit, Logan, but then I realized we're always way off most of the time anyway. So what's the point, right? What's the point of really putting the effort in the predictions when I do that, they are typically very wrong. So I just kind of went with gut. I was like, this team, this team, this team, this team, this team. Just went for it.
yeah. Whenever I got your notes on like predictions, so I could make the graphics, I was like, gosh, Jordan really likes being wrong in all of these. It's amazing how wrong you like to be. Not to say that I get them. You can't pull up last year's because I've deleted them off of the StreamYard. So, Jordan, I've gotten everything right ever since we started this show. And there's no evidence to prove that we haven't. But no, you're right, Jordan. Like it seems like we probably get one or two things right. I mean, we get pretty close to, I would say like our top of the tables usually end up being somewhat, you get, the top team or at least the top two teams, right? But then after that, it goes to hell in a handbasket real quick. So
I felt pretty good about my maybe Eastern picks. The West, I had a pretty clear top two, and then after that, I was like, "Oh, this could go anywhere." But yeah, so we'll dive into that. But first, we're going to go team by team in the Eastern Conference. And we go alphabetically here on this program. So we start with Atlanta United, a whole new team. I'm just kidding. They don't have like that many new players, but like, hey, they have a lot of players that are going to be coming in. And this really shows, I think, what Lagerwey is able to do here. So if we look at the MLSsoccer.com season preview for all these players, they're going to highlight that they've spent $40 million on 3 new DPs in the past 2 windows. And add it, Klisch from DC United, who's still a DP on their book. So almost having 4 DPs without the downside of getting Miami sanctions on their team. So that's 4 DP equivalent players in the last 2 transfer windows coming into this team. The issue is going to be, can they gel? Right, so they're losing some players. Dax McCarty, of course, he's leaving. He retired, 523 appearances, 19 seasons, and he is actually now going to be. You'll hear his voice. He's on the Apple TV crew for this season as well. Daniel Rios from Chivas Guadalajara. he was on loan there for a bit. He's now with Vancouver. Daniel Rios, I believe, came over from Nashville at some point too, right? Like, and it was just, I don't really know if that's a big departure for Atlanta, actually. So I'm not too worried about that. And then Tyler Wolff was a winger, homegrown player that they traded to RSL. So really, when we look at key departures, you're really only losing Dax. Dax was there for what, a year?
Yeah, just
So
a
you're
year.
not even really, I don't really think you're losing too much here, Atlanta. And then you're bringing in some really new players. If we're looking at the key signings, Miguel Almiron coming back from Newcastle. We talked about Klish joining, Emmanuel Latte Lath coming over from Middlesbrough as well. And if we look at their projected starting 11 that they have here for Atlanta United, they have Latte Lath up top. We have Almiron on the right. We have Lob Lobjan
Ovjan
Indizi.
and Nietzsche.
Yeah,
I'm listening to the pronunciation because like I just always call him Saba because I was like I'm not going to
there
try
you
to
go.
pronounce.
On the
I'm not
left,
hurt
right?
myself.
Moranchuk in the middle, Klish and Sleaze in the back midfield, and then Amador Williams, Gregerson, Lennon with Guzan in the back. I mean, I feel like that's a pretty strong squad here for Atlanta United, who I feel like have since Lagerwave come over has really remolded this team bit by bit. It wasn't like it wasn't like a fire sale and then like shopping spree to get this team back, but like since Lagerwave joined there, it's like moving on from players, but then bringing in the next player. And now I feel like this is a squad that can compete in the Eastern Conference. And it seems like most of the experts agree with me. We have a lot of people, if you look at the predictions here, picking Atlanta to be, let's see, there's three people pick them first, three people pick them as second, two people pick him as sixth, and one person picks him as fifth. So playoff team is the expectation going into the season. And, you know, that's what it should be. Last year, they were Eastern Conference semifinals. They beat Miami. They now have a new head coach, Ronnie Dahlia, coming in here. So I feel pretty good about them. They had 40 points last season, 10 wins, 14 losses, 10 draws. That was ninth. I definitely think they're going to be a way better team this year, and I'm excited to see what they're able to put on the field.
Yeah, I think you and I talked about this last time we did previews where we were wondering when the blank check was going to start to hit. We always made jokes about it. We've talked to many people that cover Atlanta United, and it was just always one of those clubs, Jordan, that they've not really ever been relevant to the extent that they had been when they had Joseph. When the Godfather was running through the league, and you had the opportunity to see Atlanta United build in their first year and win an MLS Cup. Ever since then, it's been kind of the same story, right? It's been, can this team gel? And I think that's an interesting point that MLS has written down, that the staff writers came up with this idea of, can they gel? And that's probably the number one thing that's been holding back this Atlanta United team. They go in and they try to hire Heinze, and Heinze didn't work. They go and hire Gonzalo Pineda, thought that would work. That didn't work. They brought in Garth Lagerwey, and then Garth kind of cleans house. And like you said, Jordan, it wasn't like it was in an instant. It wasn't like they went out and spent a ton of money in one particular window. But over the last two transfer windows, Jordan, to bring in three solid DP type players from Premier League experience and having success in other big leagues. I mean, I think that this team is primed to become one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference. I think it will take time for them to gel. I think that their defense is not quite to where they're going to want it to be. And I think that'll be an issue that they'll address going forward as well. But again, I see this Atlanta United team, Jordan, and on paper, they are the team that you look at and go, wow, they're deep. But I feel like we always have that one every year where we look at the team and go, wow, that's a deep team. They're going to make a deep run with the talent that they have on this roster. However, that being said, I still want to see somebody like a Cliche or Latte Lath to gel in a league that is very different from the league that they're used to playing in. And I know Click's been here for a year now, but I feel like it's just it hasn't come together for him. It hasn't really come together for Atlanta United. Yes, Almiron was probably the best player in the league when he was around, but it's still difficult for me to say that this team is going to instantly gel. Therefore, I don't have them as high in the table. But I think Jordan and we're, I did not project them to win MLS Cup, spoiler alert. But I do think, Jordan, that they're going to be kind of a thorn in Miami's side all year, a thorn in teams in the top of the Eastern Conference all year, because I do think eventually, given time, they will gel together. But this reminds me of that Orlando team that put a bunch of talented players together and had a really rough 2 months to start the season. I feel like that's going to be the same kind of thing for Atlanta United.
Interesting. So that leaves us with going to Charlotte as our next alphabetical. Remember, we're going conference here because I know people will be like, Austin fans wondering, you skipped us. That's when we get to the West. So sticking with the East, we have Charlotte FC. We've talked about it last week. They have Wilfried Zaha joining the team. They lose Swiderski. He is their all-time leading goal scorer with 32 goals. They lose Yoronen, and they lose Junior Urso. Gone. But they bring in Pep Biel, Eric Williamson, and Wilfried Zaha. Last year, they had finished in 5th in the Eastern Conference, a surprise team, 14 wins, 11 losses, 9 draws, 51 total points. They made it to the round 1 best of 3 last year. They have the projected starting 11 as Ajamang up top with Zaha and Abada. Then you have Beal in the middle, Diani and Westwood in the defensive midfield with Ream, Privet, Malanda, Byrne, and Kalina in goal. I don't want to be a negative guy, but because I think Zaha can work here. I think he can do like we were talking about last week. Is he going to be like a Benteke, come in and like be what some people were having Benteke as a MVP candidate last year with how many goals he was scoring, right? So can he be that type of level of player? I think so. The concerns I have is it felt to me a bit that Charlotte last year as the surprise team was a little like we get these occasionally, like St. Louis a couple of years ago, right? When they won the West. Occasionally you have that surprise team that jumps up and does well. And I think I just need to see it more to really have faith that this is going to continue. So I'm kind of doubting Charlotte. The experts on MLSsoccer.com is kind of split, honestly. You have 2 that think 4th, which would be an improvement from their 5th place finish, right? You have Sasha Kleston, who says 2nd place in the Eastern Conference. I'd like to know what he's having. And then we have, 4 6th place finishes, an 8th place finish, and a 7th place finish. So then you have a few, half of them, it looks like, or more than half, sliding back down to saying they're gonna go a little worse, right? They're going to become a little worse this year than they did last year. And that's the way I think I lean. I don't even remember what I put, but that's the way I think I lean right now, is that they're probably, if I'm looking at this right, yes, I do have them going a little worse this season. Still maybe that, around the playoff spots, a chance to get in and maybe make a run, but I don't know where you see this team at, Logan, but I'm kind of a little hesitant to say let's run it back. They, like I said, it's not like they're not adding anybody, but I wonder how it's gonna go.
Yeah, I think you make some solid points as far as Charlotte. I do think that there's some hesitancy, and the fact that all their players are going to perform at the level that they did last year. Defensively, they were, I think, one of the best teams in the whole league. I think they allowed 37 goals. I just had that pulled up. Let me see, 37 goals, which was best in the Eastern Conference. In the Western Conference, I think Seattle was the only one above them. So, um, a really good defensive team. Dean Smith, Jordan, I think, had them playing really well last year. You also get kind of, and this is a weird thing to say because I think it's just goes without saying, is that you kind of get this new manager boost sometimes, and I think that happens with a lot of excitement with these new managers coming in. Dean Smith is a really good manager. I'm interested to see how that all works together. Um, Knowing Zaha's past, I do think he can work in this league, Jordan. But you've got to know that this is a player that I think was very divisive whenever he was in the Premier League, because he has moments where he gets so involved in what's going on with himself that I think it's detrimental to the club. I know there's been times where he's kind of instigated or reacted to things that I think there's frustration from Crystal Palace fans that have had Zaha before, where I think that the talent is tremendous, but sometimes I don't think it lives up to what that hype is. Like, I just don't feel like he's ever gotten to that point, because there were a lot of times where I thought he'd go to a bigger club and it just never panned out for him. But I think it was because of his differences. I remember one time, Jordan, he got tackled on the sideline at Crystal Palace, and he picked the ball up and he threw it back towards like his bench and got frustrated. And then Hodgson put him out. Like they pulled him quickly. So it was like that was weird. Like I felt like there was a lot of negative energy coming from him at times. So I'll be interested to see what Dean Smith does with him, just because I think that he is, if there's one coach in this league that I think can get him under control, I think it would be him. But again, people are going to freak out because it's Zaha, but you also have to temper those expectations a little bit, because I do think he oftentimes underwhelmed when people thought he could be one of the top players in the league. So I am interested. I've actually got them a little higher just because I looked at the rest of the Eastern Conference, Jordan. There's not much after like 5. There's a lot of convincing that has to be done on that side of things, of that side of the Eastern Conference, Jordan, because I really do. I think it's gotten to this point where like there's some really top heavy teams, but the rest of them, man, I was having a real tough time once it got past the 4 spots in both conferences. So this is one that I think is actually going to play well. I think they defend just as good as they did last year too.
Let's move on to Chicago. First year for Greg Berhalter coming in here. Bringing in a lot of new players. Again, this might be like an Atlanta thing, but actually it's more players than Atlanta kind of brought in. So I feel like this might be where we were concerned about Atlanta fitting in and gelling quickly. I'd feel a little bit more concerned about that with Chicago, especially also having a new coach. So you have players that are out. They moved on from Rafael Chicicos. They moved on from Gaston Jimenez. They moved on from Fabian Herbers. Georgios Calstius. I butcher names. I apologize. Federico Navarro, Arnaud Saquet. All those players are out. Bringing in, though, Jonathan Bamba, Leonardo Barroso, Jack Elliott. I know a lot of Union fans wanted to re-sign him. He goes to Chicago, give them a little bit more veteran presence in the defense there. They bring in Kouame, they bring in Sam Rogers and Philip Zinkernagel. I'm not really sure how to think about this team or feel about this team. Their starting 11 projection here is Kuipers up top, Bamba, Gutierrez, Zinkernagel in the midfield, Acosta, Kouame in the defensive midfields, Gutman, Elliott, Turan, and Barroso in the defense with Brady in goal. And I feel like last year they were 15th in the Eastern Conference. It was not great. Did not qualify for the playoffs. That's the bottom of the East. 15, 7 wins, 18 losses, 9 draws, 30 points. But people feeling a little bit more excited about them, I guess is the sense you'd put it. Most people have them kind of in a playoff spot, actually. 7th place has 3 picks here by the predictions. We have 3 ninth place, and 8th place, and a 10th place finish. And I think that's probably a good spot to pick. I do think like Berhalter is going to have this team playing like he did with the U.S. men's national team. They're going to be like good enough to do some damage, but they're probably still going to have some problems scoring. But defensively, I think they'll be a little bit more sound. I don't think they'll be giving up as many goals as they had in the past. That's kind of how I feel about Chicago going into it. Well, what are your thoughts on the Fire?
Yeah, Kuiper's had a good first season with 10 goals. Brian Gutierrez is a really good young midfielder at 21 years old. But like you said, Jordan, bringing in Greg Berhalter, the structure is going to change completely. We know what it looks like. It's possession ball. It's playing, how do I say this? Not boring, but very methodical. Break down the attackers by trying to pass the ball and move the ball amongst your wings and try to cross the ball into the box. I mean, it's Berhalter ball. So you know what you're going to get with Greg. Like nothing's changed. And Jordan, we've seen that. Greg doesn't like to change. That's why Greg is no longer a U.S. men's national team coach, I think, is part of it is because he was so incapable of making adjustments until they gave him like this weird leash, I guess you'll call it, where he was fired this last time, where they gave him like a month or two to try to see if they could figure it out before they moved on. But yeah, I think, Jordan, with this team, the biggest thing with MLS, and I think the biggest thing, if you're listening to this for the first time, you're first getting into MLS, if this is like your first real season where you're excited about watching it, trying to understand it, there's so many moving pieces when you bring in 6 new starters, 5 new starters, that like it's so difficult to tell how they're all going to mesh together. And people go, well, I watched their highlights. They look great. That doesn't always translate to MLS because it's such a different style. So I'm interested, Jordan. They were abysmal defensively. I think they're going to score more goals. I think they're going to be better defensively. So I think that's automatic improvement. I don't think that this team is any longer the laughing stock of the league, which is good. Like that's good territory to get out of. I think we've got a new champion for that, and we'll talk about them. But I think Chicago, Jordan, is headed in the right direction. I'm actually excited about them. I think they finally have some structure. I'm not the biggest Greg Berhalter fan, but I do think that this is exactly what is needed to kind of stable the ship because that's what Greg is. He's pretty stable. So we'll see what happens. But again, not too high, not too low. There's so many moving pieces with the Fire. I'm just glad that it's in the right direction, it seems.
Yeah, I think this is a big change. They're going away from somebody like Frank Klopas. We'll see if he comes back in another year or so, as is the Fire tradition. But
there is no coaching challenge
when you can
look,
even when you have the downer that everybody was on after Copa America with Greg Berhalter, when you have the chance to get a U.S. men's national team or a former national team international manager for your club that is bottom of the East, I feel like you do it. So they took a swing. We'll see how it goes. They'll definitely be better. I think it would take a lot for them to be much worse. And I think that they'll be pretty okay. It's just like, will they ever get to the level of a national championship, like a MLS Cup or a trophy at all under Berhalter? History says most likely not. He was close with the Crew, but also we've seen many others win stuff with the Crew now, and it just seems like it's because for whatever reason, the Crew is just always good. It seems now. So I don't know. We'll see how he handles the whole Chicago thing, and I'm pretty sure he could actually have a very long career there if he wants to. if he just keeps them competitive in the playoffs. Like if they don't even like he could have a 10-year Jim Curtin run type thing where they're just like always hanging around there, and because it might finally have people invested in the Fire again, ownership says, yeah, sure, keep them around. It's not like a disaster, you know. Sometimes it takes a disaster for people to make those changes, but you know, we'll see. Okay, so we will then move on to FC Cincinnati. It's technically the next alphabetical one if you go by Cincinnati and not the FC part. Okay, so this one is one I'm really, really like, what is this team going to be? Right? They have two new DPs, Evander and Kevin Denke, because their key departures include Luciano Acosta. He's gone 4 years that he was in Cincinnati. He was a 2023 MLS MVP. He gets traded to FC Dallas, $6 million, up to $6 million in the new player for cash or cash for player trades. But Acosta is gone. It seems like from what I was reading before, it's just kind of like he forced his way out. I don't know what the deal was between him and Albright, but I feel like this is also something Acosta does. I mean, like he left DC, then he comes back over, comes to Cincinnati, ran his course there, I guess, and is gone, goes to Dallas. They also lose Yamil Assad, Awazium, Nico Giacchini, and Kevin Kelsey. Gone. They bring in Kevin Denke. That is from Cercle Bruges. He was the MLS record incoming transfer for a couple of months for $16.2 million. Lucas Engel comes in from Middlesbrough. Evander comes over. They pay $12 million plus incentives to Portland. 34 goal contributions last year, 15 goals, 19 assists. Remember, people, even though Portland was like 9th place in the West, people were shouting his name for MVP candidacy. So you lose your one MVP and MVP candidate and bring in another. I feel pretty good about what they did. Let's see where they finished last year. They were 3rd in the East. They got knocked out in the best of 3. They had 18 wins, 11 losses, 5 draws. And consensus is that they're a top 4 team. If you look at the predictions, we have 1 first place finish, 4 third place finishes, no, 5 third place finishes. Most people see them as 3rd again, a couple of second place and a 4th place finish in the predictions. And I feel like that's probably about what they are. If you look at their projected starting 11, we have Denke, we have Orellano, we have Evander. So you have Denke and Orellano up top with Evander in the midfield, and then you have Engel, Nowabaldo, Buka, Yedlin in your midfield. Your back 3 of Hadabi, Miazga, Robinson, and Celentano as the goalkeeper. Again, I think if they had lost Lucho and were not able to bring in a player at the caliber of Evander, I'd feel a little bit worse about them. But bringing in a new forward that's a record fee for a time, and then trading $12 million to Portland to bring over Evander, who had already had a relationship breakdown over in Portland, I feel like this is kind of best case scenario for them, and maybe could get them over the hump when it comes to winning an MLS Cup. How do you see Cincinnati going into 2025?
Definitely the most spicy team, I felt like, in the offseason. Well, no, I should no, I correct that. There's another team in the West that also got spicy. But this one in the Eastern Conference, this is the team, Jordan, that I'm highlighting that I'm going, this is exciting. Like, You don't often see that except for in other sports. Jordan, like it feels very much like the Luka Anthony Davis kind of thing, where they swap one star, maybe the best at midfielder in the league, for second best midfielder in the like. It just seems wild that these two huge stars, and I guess we can get into that further into the season that we go, because I think it's very interesting, and we don't have really that much time to break down what happened with Lucho. I find it very weird that fell apart as it did. Evander had issues with Portland and was tweeting about them after. So you're just getting a younger, more feisty Lucho Acosta. Like it's very confusing to me. This move, I think, makes sense. If you're going to move on from Lucho, you want the next best thing. I think Evander is the next best thing as a number 10. But there is some hesitancy again, because Danke comes over. He's got a sparkling record. He's won the Golden Boot in Belgium last year, scoring 27 times. That's a lot. But again, that doesn't typically mean that they're going to do the exact same thing and replicate that in MLS, because that has to do, you have to be able to translate that to MLS, and that's more difficult to do, just because I feel like MLS is a little bit more wonky. The speed in which they play is very quick here in MLS. So I'm interested to see. It's a pretty physical league. Eastern Conference is a physical defensive league at times, so it can be tough to kind of rattle out goals. Cincinnati, people write about how good Cincinnati's defense was. They had some minor slip-ups last year where I think that actually caused them to kind of drop out of the contention for MLS Cup, as they had said. And Miazga is always going to be an issue, because you don't know if he's going to be in, because he does shoot his mouth quite a bit. So again, they've got a lot of things they've got to shore up internally. I feel like there's a lot of things internally that's not quite settled. So that'll be interesting to kind of follow. But this is definitely, Jordan, if I have to pick out a team to watch, this is the one in the Eastern Conference, because I just don't know how it's going to go. This could go really well, and they could be the team that takes down Miami, or this could go really poorly and end up being a really, really disappointing season. So we'll see what happens. But again, I think that Jordan, I think Cincinnati is probably the most exciting if I'm looking at it right now on day -3 or whatever we're at right now, 4, 5. So season's getting ready to start. I'm excited to see what Cincinnati does.
Yeah, I think they'll be good as they usually are. So it's just, is this enough to get them over the hump? Bringing in a new striker when your defense is sound typically, and bringing in somebody to replace Lucho right before the season starts, and they are an MVP candidate, and that did it in this league, I feel like is a pretty good move as you're getting ready to. It's not like a how will they play in MLS type of thing when it comes to Evander. How does he play in MLS? 34 goal contributions and MVP candidate last year. So if he can keep that type of form up, then you're looking, pretty sharp going into the season. And I feel like for that type of club too, it is pretty as close as you can get to MLS Cup or bust, because they've been there. They've been, they were getting better and better and better. Than last year, they kind of crashed out.
I agree.
Right? Yep. It's like kind of where Philly was a few years ago. It's like you got to get there. You got to win, because your window is not closing, but it's like, because that team spends money. So, I mean, like, they had Vasquez, they had Brenner, right? They had players before that were like, oh, maybe this will be a window, and they keep bringing in new players to replace them. So obviously their window is kind of open, but it's just, if you're a fan of Cincy, you got to think it's got to come soon, right? Because we have the team, we have the players, we got to keep it up and eventually win one. Talking about a team that wins, Columbus Crew are the next team that we're going to be talking about here. They go ahead and finished second in the East last year, 66 points, 19 wins, 6 losses, 9 draws, and they got knocked out in the best of 3. They had some key departures. They lose Chucho Hernandez. They lose Christian Ramirez. Matan is gone. Yaboa is gone. And in Lapinlainen comes in from Montreal. That's really the only key signing that they've had. If we look at their projected starting 11, Russell Rowe up top, Chambost on the left, Rossi on the right, Arvston, Nagby, Swadoski, Farsi in the midfield, Amundsen, Chamacho, Moreira in the back with Schulte at goal. Wide ranges when we're looking at predictions. We have some saying as low as 9th, some saying as high as 2nd, but most of them are more falling in the 4th, 5th, and 6th positions here for them. And I feel like, I feel like Columbus is probably going to go down a bit this year. If they had wanted to win and become more of a dynasty, last year would have been the year for them to kind of close that out with winning another MLS Cup. But at this time, it seems like there really is a new retooling here. They lose Chucho. That's a big, big loss, and they haven't really brought in anybody that can replace him. So now you lose all of his contributions, and you don't even really add anybody in there. I mean, they might eventually in the summer. They could even probably add some players soon, but going into it as of February 17th for me right now, this team has clearly lost maybe too much, and I see them kind of going down the table a bit.
Yeah, I think everybody is feeling out the temperature of Columbus, but I think we all agree. I think that this is the year they've decided that they were going to take one more run at Miami with Chucho, and I think that it fell short and fell flat. So I think that they're kind of in this retooling. I mean, Wilfred Nancy, I'm not sure how much longer he'll actually be there, because he really is. He's one of the top managers in this league, if not the top manager in this league. There were a lot of people hunting around for him. I know U.S. men's national team had interest, but I think Pochettino fell into their lap. So I think that that's where that kind of ended once they realized that Maurizio was interested. Jordan, 33 goal contributions. So this is the equivalent of losing like an Evander or a Lucho and then not replacing him. So
yeah,
imagine what that would do to those teams, right? Like if Lucho was gone from Cincinnati, you and I would have had much different conversations if they didn't bring in Evander. I think it would have been more of like, now what? Now where do you go? Except this time, you got to think about this. They got rid of their best defensive mid. They got rid of their best goal scorer in Zelarayan. They got rid of Chucho. They got rid of like their top 3 players within a span of like 2 transfer windows or whatever it's been, like a year and a half. So like this is going to be a rough go, I think, for the Crew. I think that they're still good defensively. They've got one of the top young goalkeepers in this league and probably in the United States. But I don't see where this goal is. They're going to score 70 plus goals, Jordan. They're going to probably closer to like maybe 40. So like 40, maybe 50. Like that's really low. They've not added anything. Lapalainen is not anything to be excited about if you're a Crew fan. It's kind of a bummer because I think that this was like the sleeping giant that could wake up and knock out Miami when they had Chucho. But I think now it's probably going to fall into the laps of like a Cincinnati, maybe an Orlando or Red Bull to kind of knock them off the top of the East. So
or
it'll be
Atlanta,
interesting.
like they did.
Atlanta, sorry,
Playoffs.
Atlanta.
Yeah.
Yep, or Atlanta. So I don't know, Jordan. I'm really just not feeling it for the Crew. I think that's kind of accurate where everybody is placing them.
Yeah, I don't have too much to say about them other than, they better hope Nancy sticks around or else they could go even further, right? Down. Talking about a team that can't really go down too much because they weren't very high to begin with. DC United is the next team that we're going to go with here. They last year finished in the 10th. Well, hold on. It says 10th in the Western Conference. They have that wrong. On here. I'm assuming 10th in the Eastern Conference.
They really did not play well last year. If they were 10th in the Western and all the way down in the Eastern too, gosh,
10 wins, 14 losses, 10 draws, 40 points is what they had. They did not qualify for the playoffs, and they lose a lot of players. They lose Akimboni, they lose Bono, Jahome, right? Click, Ku Di Pietro, McVeigh, Pedro Santos, Martin Rodriguez. Those players are gone. They bring in a couple, right? Kim Jun Hong, 21-year-old goalkeeper from South Korea. Randall Leal from Nashville. Zhao Piglo, a Brazil youth international or former British youth international, who had 11 goals, 11 assists, and 120 appearances through Internacional in Brazil, and Kai Rolls, who is an Australian center back. So they lose all those players, which you might think, hey, that's good because those players didn't do good last year. But they really didn't bring over, like, when you have to say João Piglo is a former Brazil youth international who was in the Polish top flight side Radomiak Radom, and that he has 11 goals, 11 assists in 120 club appearances. That's all clubs. That's not just at that club. All clubs, 120 club appearances, and he's got 22 goal contributions. And that's your big signing. Makes me feel a little like, ugh, right? Like, obviously, they still have Benteke. Their projected starting 11 is Benteke, Piccolo on the left, Pirani, Stroud, Inau, Pelota. In the back of the midfield, Schnegg, Rolls, Bartlett, Herrera, and then Jun Hong in the goal. But man, I don't know. I don't see it with this team, man. I don't know. I feel sorry for DC United fans because this is a once storied franchise who has done absolutely nothing since Wayne Rooney and Lucho Acosta were on the team at this point. They have no ambition, it seems, right? They constantly are re-blowing up the team every year or every other year. And none of it works. None of it. The most that they ever got was like what, under Losada, when they were like, wow, they're like 7th place right now. This is incredible. And then they fired him, and then they dropped, and then they've continued to drop. And it seems like a lot of people agree with me. The highest finished I see in the predictions are 11th. Everybody else says 12th, 13th, and 15th is the most picked finish for this. That would be the worst in the East. I just feel like they've lost too many players and don't have enough quality there other than Benteke. And they did that last year. He was an MVP candidate. He was Golden Boot candidate. He was scoring goals, and it wasn't enough to get them into the playoffs. And I don't think it will be this year.
Yeah, no, he's probably wishing he got included in on that trade market. Because, I mean, I love when the weakness is everything around him. Christian Benteke, 30 goal contributions, 23 goals, 7 assists, Jordan. He's going to regress. I don't think he's that good. Like, I don't think he's 23 goals again good. So I do think he'll regress a little bit, which will be even worse for DC United. You're right. It's just ambitionless. Yeah. So I just feel like there's nothing here. Like, Jordan, if you and I went back to our season previews and collected like the last 4 years of players out for DC United, we'd have like 150 names. Like, I remember last year I had to make a whole separate column just for DC United because of how many players they turned over. And you and I got on last year and said that this was exciting because at least they added MLS proven talent, and that did not work. Now they're going for this more of like a renewed spirit with younger players, but also a mix of some of the MLS talent. Like, I don't really know what direction they're going in. They get rid of Cleek. Like, I don't know. I just don't know. I don't know what they're doing. Jordan, this is easily one of the worst teams in the league, and it's not particularly close.
I was muted. Sorry. I do think that this is the worst team in the league, and I think we both agree with that, and it'll be very obvious when we do our picks here. It's a shame too because they have a brand new stadium, and by brand new I mean like the last 7 years. That's brand new to me, especially after playing at RFK for so long. And they represent our nation's capital and are about as well run as our nation's capital. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to Inter Miami is the next team that we are going to be talking about. which is a shock because you're like, I feel like there should be more teams before we get to M. No, that's a lot of Western Conference teams, though. I don't know how much there is to say about Miami other than, hey, they were Supporter Shield winners last year, first place in the East, 22 wins, 4 losses, 8 draws, 74 points. That's even with Messi being out for a good chunk of the year. You had them get bounced out by Atlanta in the round 1, best of 3. But a lot of people still picking them to finish in the top 3, especially it seems like first or third is the most popular pick for them. They have a new manager, Javier Mascherano, is now going to lead them. Their projected starting 11 is Luis Suarez up top, Allende on the left, Messi on the right, Segovia, Redondo in the midfield, Busquets in that defensive mid, Alba, Martinez, Aviles, and Lujan in the back with Drake Callender in goal. So let's talk about who they lost, though. They lost Leonardo Campagna. He's gone to New England. Facundo Farias is gone due to a torn ACL. So he is out, and then he went back to his home country, top flight side. Nicholas Ferrari is gone. He also tore his ACL. He played 10 matches. He's now on loan. I think he's on loan somewhere now. Diego Gomez joined Brighton Hove Albion for $15 million. Sergei Kristov is gone, and Matias Rojas is gone. Key signings, Alande comes in from Celta de Vigo. 18 goals, 7 assists. Maxi Falcon comes in. Gonzalo Lujan comes in. Fafa Picault comes in. Good off-the-bench signing, I think, for them. And Telasco Segovia comes in as well. So that is some key signings there because 4 of those names are in the starting 11 projection here. But how do you feel about Miami running it back with Suarez signing another deal? Busquets is back, Alba's back, Messi's back. Hopefully they're all healthy going into the season, and they bring in some other pieces, and they have a new coach who is, you guessed it, one of Messi's friends.
Yeah, interesting, right? You look at some of the players they brought in also, a lot of Argentine blood in there, a lot of South American blood. So you know who's doing the recruiting. So if you look at this team, though, Jordan, I mean, in the preseason, Allende, he looked really good against Orlando. You're just adding more fire to the I guess I don't know what the bonfire. I don't know. This is all about health, Jordan. Like this is such a hard team to predict because once they feel like they're not going to win Supporter Shield, I feel like that's going to take a different you're going to see a different Miami team. And I still feel like they're an injury away from one of those big 3, I guess, that could really ruin a season. Like if Messi had to go out for another 2-month period, I'd really like to see how Suarez handles it again. Just because at some point, right, Father Time comes calling. When that happens, I guess that's when the Miami thing's going to end, when that experiment ends. This season, though, Jordan, I feel like they did reinforce their starting 11 with 4 new players that they're going to add into that I think are actually better than the ones that they had in those spots. So I think they're just as good as they were last year, Jordan, if not better. And if Messi stays healthy all season, then you do have a legitimate Supporter Shield MLS Cup contender. Same thing with Suarez. If Suarez goes down, I actually think at this point, Jordan, Suarez might actually be a bigger loss than Lionel, and that might be crazy. And people are like, "Oh, you're crazy," but like last year, he shouldered so much of the issues that Messi might have had. So again, Messi's a magical man. He'd make things happen. They'd still be a contender. But I really do think Luis Suarez is such a key part to why Messi was so successful and is still so successful this year. So again, I think it all depends on those two being healthy. What does that look like? Jordan, this is a marathon, not a sprint for Inter Miami. They don't need to win Supporter Shield. They like to say that they want to, but this is all about winning MLS Cup, I think. So again, I still put them there at the end of the day, and it all depends on how healthy those two are.
Yeah, I think this is a team that can repeat last year with like first place, but it is going to be, I think, a little tougher this year, just from, it's tough to do that. It's tough to win a Supporter Shield back-to-back. Doesn't happen a lot. Let's talk about CF Montreal. Yeah, I know. Sadly, we have to. But they end up losing Raheem Edwards. They lose Joseph Martinez, Victor Wanyama, Corbo, Kokoro. Those players are gone. They bring in Fabian Herbers, former Union and Chicago player. Jalen Neal, they bring in as well from LA Galaxy. Prince Owosu comes in from Toronto. They bring in Cianchuk, and they bring in Veroni coming over from New England. I don't know what to really think of this team. This is a very interesting team. They finished 8th in the East last year, 11 wins, 13 losses, 10 draws. They made it to the wild card match. Their starting 11 is predicted to be Veroni up top with Clark and Duke on each side. Pierce, Piet, Saliba, Marshall, Rudy in the midfield. Neal, Waterman, Campbell is the back three with Siros in goal. And it seems like a lot of them don't know what to make of this. I see as high as 8th. I see 10th. I see 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th. I feel like they've lost a lot without gaining as much, but then I forgot about the Veroni trade at times. And you look at it, you're like, oh, yeah, he's there. But I mean, it's not like he tore it up in New England, right? So I don't really know what to make of this team. I don't really expect them to be super great this season. I definitely see them falling from 8th is what my prediction would be.
Yeah, I don't think this is a playoff team. It's such a weird mix of players, and you lose all that veteran presence that you once had with Victor. I mean, that's such a huge thing that I don't think a lot of people are focusing in on teams that are sitting in the 8th spot in the playoffs. But losing veteran presence at the top of the league is awful. Losing it where you're at 8th and 9th on the bubble, it makes it even harder. So, yeah, I like with you, Jordan. I think Veroni, maybe he has a resurgence and actually plays well in this league, but he's not once convinced me that he can. Where you and I went for 2 years and said, hey, maybe, and then he never does. So yeah, I'm with you, Jordan. I think that this team is not a playoff team, but I think they're saved by the fact that there are some really bad teams in the Eastern Conference this year.
Talking about some teams that were really bad in the Eastern Conference last year. We'll get to them. Nashville last year finished 13th in the East, 36 points, 9 wins, 16 losses, 9 draws. They have a new head coach, BJ Callahan, former U.S. men's national.
Why are you putting them in Nashville? Why are you putting them in the East?
Because they are in the East.
Are they in the East? I'm so confused.
Yeah. Are they not in the East? It says they finished in the East last year. So
I'm so confused. Are they in the East? I guess they're in the East, aren't they? They're back in the East.
Yeah, because San Diego was in the...
Man, I'm having a day. All right. Yeah, go ahead. Continue.
Right? Let's see. Nashville's in the East.
Okay, I'll be
They were in the East last year, too.
I don't remember. That's how bad they were.
13th in the East last year. So they lose Annabelle Godoy to San Diego. They lose Sean Davis to LA Galaxy. They lose Randall Leal. They lose Lucas McNulton and Shaq Moore. They bring in Brian Acosta, Gaston Brugman from... I mean, look, this is MLS Cup MVP, Gaston Brugman, who filled in, right, when he was so instrumental with PK out. Not PK. Why am not Gerard? Yeah, not Gerard PK, but Puge, Ricky Puge. Ricky Puge. Okay. He was instrumental with him being out. They bring in Palacios. Andy Nahar is now back to MLS, and Edvard Tagsith comes in. Their projected starting 11 here is Surridge and Mukhtar up top, Mule, Brugman, Yazbek, and Tagseth in the midfield, with Lovitz, Palacios, Zimmerman, Nahar in the back, Willis in goal. I mean, that squad that I read out actually sounds a lot better than what I'm thinking, but I I don't know. Most people don't have them very high. 8th is the highest I see, 13th is the lowest I see. And I don't really know what to make of Nashville as we go into this season. They were once a team just a couple years ago that was playing for MLS, not MLS Cup, Leagues Cup. And they were, having Mukhtar MVP. They were near the top of the East or the West, depending what year it was. And now I'm just really down on them.
I mean, I think some of it is there is regression from Hani Mukhtar. Like he was not MVP caliber last year, 8 goals and 10 assists. Jordan, I think this might sound crazy to Nashville fans who watch him all the time, but could we could we possibly fathom the fact that maybe Hani Mukhtar is not as potent as he once was because Sam Sturridge is there and he takes away a lot of that space that Hani Mukhtar probably occupies normally. And then there was always this argument of like Nashville needed an attacking player in the front that was a good striker, but to kind of play them in like a dual striker system or like a system where both of them are playing pretty far forward, like that's really tough on a player to try to adapt to when that's never been their style of play. And I don't feel like that's Hani Mukhtar's style of play. Hani Mukhtar is very much get forward and try to get into many spaces as he can going forward. And then that's when he creates difficulty because they don't know if he's going to pass it or shoot it. And oftentimes he'd do both. So I don't know. Like I feel like that Surge is nice because it's like finally got a goal scorer, but like Hani doesn't really fit into that mold, I don't think. And then defensively, they've gotten worse. Like Jordan, this used to be the top defensive team in MLS. They're like middle of the pack below average. Like this is not a good defensive team now. I think a lot of that has to do with some of the central defensive mid problems that they had last year. Jordan, remember you and I were watching a game, I think it was early on in the season, where like 10 of their starting players were sitting up in like a suite. So injuries obviously play a role. But like you said, Jordan, you read this roster and go, man, that's a pretty good team. I think they should be doing pretty well. But it looks like, I mean, look at all those games missed, like from star players that score a lot of goals. And maybe that's the tale, right? Maybe that's the tale of what happened last year. Maybe they're better this year. But until they prove us wrong, they look like they're trending in the wrong direction. So I'll be interested to see how Nashville, I guess, responds to what they did last year.
All right, let's move on to New England. They finished 13th in no, they finished 14th in the East last year. 31 points, 9 wins, 21 losses. Sorry for the laugh there. 4 draws. Did not qualify for the playoffs. They kept Caleb Porter, and they're like, let's make some changes, right? So they lose Ariaga. They lose Bajrak Teravivic, a 19-year-old homegrown attacker, was gone to PSV Eindhoven. Borio is gone. They lose Mark Anthony Kay in a trade, along with Dave Romney and Ian Harkes are now traded, and they lose Veroni to Montreal. So they bring in Leonardo Campagna, Ceballos. They bring in Feingold, Fofana, and Ganago, and Jackson Ewell comes over. And if we look at their projected starting 11, it says Campagna up top, Ganago on the left, Carlos Heel in the middle, Langoni on the right, Yusuf and Ewell in the defensive midfield, with Sands, Ceballos, Fofana, and Bai in the back, with Ivacic in goal. And the highest I see anybody predict is 5th. So if they get close to that, that one person can say, hey, I was right. But most seem to be in that 13th, 10th, 9th, 12th position. And I don't know if it's just that I'm down on Caleb Porter now or what, but last year was a disaster. And this year, I don't know if I see it going much, much better, really. I'm kind of down on this team.
Yeah, I mean, you look at their outgoing, it's guys that they thought were going to be something. I mean, Esmir is going to be really good. He's a young attacking player, a homegrown 19-year-olds. He's one of their best players that they are losing as far as prospects of talent. And then Mark Anthony Kay. Barrero never got healthy again. Dave Romney, who'd been there for quite some time. And then Vrioni, who never really panned out. You add in Leonardo Campana, and he's pretty good. Like, he was really good for Miami. I think that he can have somewhat of an effect, but Carles Gil, again, another player that I think, like Hani Mukhtar, has regressed. He's no longer the Carles Gil that I think that they need to be one of the top teams or even a playoff team. Like, I think this team really struggles to be a playoff team, Jordan. And they just, again, they're stuck underneath the Caleb Porter hammer. And unfortunately for Revs fans, I think you're going to have to sit through another awful year. And then next year will be just as bad because they'll absolutely just destroy this team next year. So good riddance to, everybody that's left. I'm sure Carlos Gil will be next. But we'll see. I just got no faith that this team's going to be a playoff team.
Me neither. Let's move on from New England, and we will go to the other news. New York Red Bull, NYCFC are the next two teams we talk about. New York Red Bulls, they lose Elias Manuel. They lose Andreas Reyes. They lost John Tolking, and they lose Dante Van Zier. But they bring in Victor Bogets, if I said that right, probably not. Eric Shapu Motang comes in. We have Raheem Edwards joining the team. We have Alexander Hack joining the team. And Tim Parker is back. He played for them in 2018 and 2020. We have, if we're looking at the projection lineup, Chopo Motang up top with Forsberg and Morgan. Edwards, Carballo, Edelman, Harper in the midfield with Hack, Nealis, and Ile in the back with Coronel in goal. I'm actually kind of surprised at some of the response here. I see as low as 10th. I see 7th, 5th, 9th, 4th, 3rd. They were 7th last year and had 47 points. Forsberg took a little bit to get going. Then, they were playing a little better after that. I don't know. They were a team when I was writing these predictions of where do I fit this team in, because last year I think I was down on them and then they really surprised me. And now I feel like they should be building off of that. But it seems like some people think they might actually take a step back or hang around the same. What's your thoughts on the Red Bulls?
I'm not really excited about things they've done, which is always the same story with these two. Forsberg was a really nice addition. I'll give him that. Like last season, was it last year? Yeah, last year. These years all start to fly together. But again, they just don't ever add that piece, right? Like, I know you grew up with a Red Bull team, Jordan, that was just so exciting when they would add players, and they'd add a lot of international guys, but also had a lot of the US guys that were really good. The tandem between Kleshtin and Bradley Wright Phillips, you had Thierry Henry, you had guys that played, man. You had dudes that everybody knew around the world. And I just feel like they just don't get there anymore. They just don't have that sparkle. And I think you need that MLS. You are you going to tell me that this team is going to be able to run through some of these Eastern Conference teams that we've started to talk about have gotten better, like a Miami, like a Cincinnati? I just don't see it. So again, I'm not as low as as Valdo Alonso, who had him in 10th, but I'm not as high on say a Matt Doyle, finishing 3rd for this team. And they might finish 3rd or 4th because of, again, I think that the East is taking a step back, but we'll see. There's nothing that ever really excites me about the Red Bull, which is really a shame because I do think that they're a good team. They're just not great.
NYCFC. Move on to them. They lose Christian McFarland. They lose Jovan Michachovic, and they lose James Sands. They've brought in nobody. Key signings, none listed here. Projected starting 11 is Martinez up top, Ojeda and Wolf on the sides, Rodriguez in center mid, Parks and Pereira in the defensive mids, and then O'Toole, Risa, Martins, and Gray with Freese in goal. I see, again, a wide range, 5th, 8th, 10th, 9th, 11th, 10th. A lot of 10th, a lot of 11th type of thing like that. They had 50 points last year, 6th place in the Eastern Conference. They made it to the semifinals, the Eastern Conference. This is a team where I probably put them. I don't remember. I'm looking at my thing here. Okay, I put them a little higher than I probably would have because they just seem like they're that team that if you put them low, they end up overperforming typically. And I think it was last year at a point where they were really low and then they just kind of turned it on and started climbing the table. That may have been 2 years ago. I don't remember. But like it happens almost every time I predict NYCFC. So I couldn't really count them out. But yeah, they didn't really do much for me this year. And not much to talk about with NYCFC.
And rumors on Twitter or X, Santi Rodriguez is gone too. He's on that depth chart, but that was like 6 hours ago that he's rumored. So he's gone. And Jordan, again, I don't know how many times you and I get on here and absolutely we're never going to get credentialed at NYCFC if they listen to us because we just rip them to shreds because they are a city football group and they act like they are the most broke team in the world. They're like, no, we don't have anybody. Leave us alone. So this is such a sad team. Like the state of New York City, as far as
the state of New York soccer as a whole, Logan, both of these teams are feeder clubs to other large soccer teams, and I can't stand it. You should be wanting to win in New York to have a team. Okay, let's talk about Orlando. They're the next team. They lose Bruce Seth. They lose Facundo Torres. They bring in Nicolas Rodriguez, Marco Pasalic, and they bring in Eduard Atuesta coming back over to MLS. And their projected starting 11 here is Enrique up top, Angulo, Ojeda, and Pasalic in the midfield, Atuesta and Araujo in the defensive midfield, with Santos, Janssen, Schlegel, and Thorhalsen in the back, with Gillespie in goal. And you, our resident Orlando fan, fourth in the Eastern Conference last year. They made it to the Eastern Conference final. They started getting on a roll. I see 4th, 5th, 7th, 8th, 6th positions here. How good do you feel about this team going into the season this weekend?
Yeah, no, I'm feeling really good. I think Enrique is a really interesting and intriguing piece because he's always been behind somebody, and this year he gets a start because Duncan McGuire is hurt. They do not have a striker, so besides him, like this is it. So he gets to prove that he is the next man up, and at times he has looked like the next man up. So we'll see how he does. I'm really excited about Martin Ojeda. He's finally starting to look like that star number 10 that we've needed for a very long time and did so last year. Pasavic, I think, is a really excellent signing. I think people are going to be excited about the skills that he has on the ball. Very similar to Facundo Torres, I would say. I think it translates well here. It'll take him some time to learn the league. Angulo is one of the best wingers in the league as well. And then my favorite signing, Jordan, that they made was Eduard Atuesta. Again, I think he was one of the top central defensive mids in all of MLS just a few years ago when he was with LAFC. He's easily the one that I'm highlighting and marking down as the player to watch. I do worry, though, Jordan, that Rodrigo Schlegel is a starting center back. He is not a starting center back in this league. He's a very nice reserve, nice guy, but that's where my concern is. I'm afraid down the gut behind where Schlegel is, that's just a huge area of concern just because of he's just not great defensively. Like he'll give you 45 minutes that are good, and then the other 45 you're kind of going, oh my gosh, somebody help. So Janssen needs to stay healthy. That's where their season lies. I am really high on Orlando City just because I do feel like there's a lot of learning that's going to happen in the Eastern Conference. I feel like their continuity is there at least. So we'll see. It'll all depend on how Enrique fits into that starting striker role and what their central defensive presence looks like aside from Janssen.
Let's talk about the Philadelphia Union. From your club to my club now. They lose Jack Elliott. They lose Leon Flock. They lose Jack McGlynn. They bring in Ian Glavinovic from Newell's Old Boys in Argentina. And they bring in Jovan Lukic from Serbia. That's it. Projected start at 11 here is Uwa and Baribo up top with Gazdag in the midfield, with Lukic and Quinn Sullivan in the midfield, and Jean-Jacques in the defensive midfield position, with Kai Wagner, Glavinovic, Glesnes, and Hariel in the back, with Andre Blake in goal. And I see people say as high as 8th. I see as low as 14th here. Bradley Carnell coming in to a 12th place team from last year, 37 points, 9 wins, 15 losses, 10 draws. This was a team that was undefeated at home for the first stretch of the season until we went and saw them. And then completely fell apart at a certain point last year. I am feeling, and I see a lot of Union fan sentiment this way, very apathetic going into the season. No Jim Curtin. We have no idea how Carnell is going to do with this team. We didn't really bring anybody, but then we ship out another young player like Jack McLinn. And here we go. We'll see how it goes. On paper, the team doesn't look that bad. When you're talking about, like, if Glavinovic can come in and be a good defensive player, great. If you can, have your Leon Flock replacement, and if you can, like on paper. But here's the thing: a lot of the times that you'll see too, and I don't know if it was a Jim Curtin thing, an Ernst Tanner thing, but there'd be sometimes like Baribo took forever to get on the field. That seems like that may have been a Curtin call, right? No pun intended there. Then you also had I can't even remember the guy's name, but a player came over a couple years ago and never played with the first team and was shipped back out like a year or two later. And it's like, okay, will these players actually play? Probably, because the depth chart will require them to, because we've lost so many players. But I don't know. I'm not feeling really good about this season for the Philadelphia Union. I see some of our fans think this is like a borderline wild card team, and I'm not sure if I see that right now. But it'll really all depend on how Carnell matches in with this team and gets them to maybe play some really good ball.
Yeah, I second that. All of it. It kind of looks like a blend of kind of a rebuild, retool kind of thing too. Like it feels like those are younger players that they went and got too from overseas. It wasn't like they were shipping out for different veterans, and that's not typically their style to go after veterans anyway. But I do feel like, Jordan, this is kind of a changing of the guard, which they need. Like 100% agree with this. But Bradley Carnell, sorry, Jordan, but and you know this, like he's just not it. He's not it. I don't know, man. I feel bad. Like they're definitely a bubble team for me.
All right, let's move on to the last Eastern Conference team, Toronto FC. They have lost Shane O'Neill. They lose Prince Owosu. They bring in Ola Brynhildsen from FC Michelin, and they bring in Theo Corbeau. Projected starting 11 is Brynhildsen and Corbeau. Brynhildsen up top, Corbeau on the left, Bernadeschi on the right, Longstaff and Osorio in the midfield, with Flores in the defensive midfield, Peretta, Rosted, Long, and Larea in the back, with Johnson in goal. And I see 14th, 15th, 12th as the options here. They were 11th last year. They have a new head coach with Robin Fraser, who they had to get kind of last minute here. I think this is going to be a bottom MLS team here. Like in the Eastern Conference, I don't see them as being particularly good. They're in that bottom 4 area for me. I don't know if you have much to add about Toronto.
They're still holding on to Insigne. I mean, he's there. He's not
He's
there.
But I think they were trying to move him, and then probably couldn't really find a good partner.
Yeah, even Italian clubs were like, "No, we're good." like I think Como wanted him, and then they were like, "Yeah, it's too much." Because again, I bet you Toronto's just a really bad run organization right now. Like them too. Like we can throw them in the basket with DC United. Like they are just a crap.
They're willing to spend money though.
They
just
are
need to have somebody that
money.
can actually make the good calls in the general manager position now.
Agreed.
Like I feel like that's the missing piece there. and Greg Vanney got out at the right time to go to a team that he has a lot of good say over in LA Galaxy and won an MLS Cup. So, okay, let's go ahead and look at our Eastern Conference picks. These are mine. I have Miami in first, Atlanta in second, Cincy in third, Orlando in fourth, Crew dropping to fifth, Red Bull New York and NYCFC in sixth and seventh, Charlotte in eighth, Philly in ninth, Chicago in 10th. I almost put Chicago higher, but I was like, I couldn't do it. Nashville in 11th, Toronto in 12th, Montreal 13th, New England in 14th, DC United 15th. No spoilers here. Our wooden spoon pick for both of us is DC United. So I definitely have them as being the worst in all of MLS. But that's my Eastern Conference predictions. I don't think I have anything really like when I was just spouting off names, like typing up my answers. It was like Miami, Atlanta, Cincy. I actually forgot about Orlando for a bit. And then I was like, oh, crap, I have to fit them somewhere. And I had to plop them in fourth, push Crew down a bit because I felt pretty good about the two New York teams being 6 and 7. I feel like that's usually where they slot in at this point. So and I couldn't go Charlotte matching fifth again. So I have them in eighth, still in a playoff spot. And I have a wild card team of Philadelphia. Bottom of the thing was tough. I was like, DC's there. Toronto could probably go further down. Montreal could probably go down. New England is down there. Those are my predictions. Let's go ahead and throw anything to say there before we throw up yours.
No, because I mean, I agree with you. I think this is so difficult to do for these Eastern Conference and Western Conference. So if you look at mine, again, I think it's just so hard to
Pretty
predict
close.
because of how bad I think the teams below 5 are. Like 5 and 6 are rough. But yeah, Miami number 1, Orlando number 2, number 3 Cincinnati, 4 Atlanta, 5 Charlotte, 6 Red Bull New York. I don't know why I said it like that because it's like that. 7 Columbus Crew, 8th Chicago, 9th Philadelphia, 10th NYCFC, 11th New England, 12th Montreal, 13th Toronto, 14th Nashville, and of course, like our graphic showed, DC United 15th.
Yeah, wooden spoon. All right, let's let's try to do we have time to do the West? This is a long show.
Yeah, I mean we can because I mean we can I just worry about the split of the episode with the supporter shield and the other one on the tail end of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like people I think are willing to you'll have to yeah, let's just do it. It's
Okay.
2 hours. People are gonna stop it and start it. Like I think it's fine.
Okay. So let's go. The first Western Conference team here is Austin FC. We'll probably have to pick up the pace a little bit here on the West for some reason. We spent a lot of time on a really bad Eastern Conference. They lose Sebastian Driussi, Alex Ring, Valencia, and Jassy Zardes. But they bring in Dubersarski, Sabovic, Ilie Sanchez, Uzuni, and Brandon Vasquez, which we talked about last week. So they have him slotting in at the top with Uzuni on the left, Bukhari on the right, Pereira and Sabovic in the midfield with Ilie Sanchez in the defensive midfield, Biro, Heinz, Ike, and Savatuk, Dessler in the back with Stuver in goal. They finished 10th in the West last year. I see a mix of 4th, 5th, 6th, 9th, and 11th, 14th for the Western Conference prediction for Austin this year. How do you feel about Austin as we go into 2025?
You know, I better than what I did last year, if that makes any sense, I guess. I do like Brandon Vasquez a lot. Like I think that helps them tremendously. Just because I mean, you move on Sebastian, you know, had his time. Just like I think some of these other 10s are starting to feel with Heel and Mukhtar. I think it's time to move on. But again, I think this is a solid team, Jordan. there's so many good teams in the Western Conference. Like,
Mhm.
I do feel like there are a legitimate chance that there are 11 to 12 playoff teams that we could possibly see. So I don't know. I'm feeling much better about the Western Conference than I was the East. But I still feel like Austin, there's much more room for improvement, but they got better.
All right, Colorado Rapids. This was the team that was finished 7th in the West. They got knocked out in the best of 3. They lose Abubakar, Jonathan Lewis, and Jasper Lofelson are gone. They bring in Joss Atencio, Awaziem, and Ku Di Pietro from DC United. Their projected starting 11 here is Navarro up top, Mihalovic on the left, Ku Di Pietro in the middle, Cabral on the right, Intencio and Bassett in the midfield with Vines, Awaziem, Maxo, and Cannon in the defense with Stefan in goal. I'm actually kind of shocked that a lot of these people have them as like anywhere from 11th to 15th. I do see a 6th and a 7th pick, but with Chris Armas in his second year, Stefan Mack over here in his second year with the Rapids, you would think you would want to see an increase from 7th place, but it seems like a lot of people are not too high on the Rapids going into it. And I can kind of understand why, because there's some big stuff that had happened in the West, I think. Some good signings, some big movements and stuff that I don't know if you can just plop them in that top 7 like they were last year. But I'll be curious to see how you feel about the Rapids.
I think they're all Debbie Downers. I feel really good about the Rapids. And I kind of did last year, and then they started to play well, and then they kind of tailed off at the end. I still feel like, Jordan, they've got so many proven players in this league, like Georgie Mihalovic, Cole Bassett, Sam Vines, Reggie Cannon, Zach Steffen, Navarro. Like, these are all dudes that have played in this league for quite some time. You got Awaziem, and then you also have Intencio. Jordan, I actually think that this team could go past projections. I actually think this is one of those teams that we look back on the year and go, oh, okay, I guess that makes sense as to why they were so good. Still think they need to add in the attack a little bit, score some more goals. But again, I actually like this team quite a bit.
Let's go to FC Dallas. They lost Paul Areola, Jesus Ferreira, Ila Ramende, Tafari, Valesco, gone. They bring in Abubakar, Luciano Acosta with the $6 million deal with FC Cincinnati, Benetti, Leo Chu. That comes from the Seattle trade, is where Chu comes from. Anderson Julio comes over here. Shaq Moore and your Hoghide comes over as well. So what we have projected here is Musa up top, Julio on the left, Acosta in the middle, Kamungo on the right, Ramiro and Delgado in the back midfield, Farfan, Ibahaga, your Hoghide, and Moore in the back with Pace in the goalkeeper spot here. They were 11th last year. I see a wide range again of anywhere from 6th or 5th down to 11th or 10th. When I just looked at that projected start in 11, I'm actually feeling a little better about them than I was. But I think the Lucho deal is probably one of the best Dallas teams of recent times I can think of that are not probably just being overinflated due to hype. The way some Dallas teams have been. But I'm curious to get your thoughts on Dallas. You feeling good about them or down?
So this is my team I'm taking a swing at this year. I've got them. Spoiler alert! I've got them really, really low in the Western Conference. You read off,
and I
that,
understand that because you've had
like,
them high a lot, and they've
yeah,
disappointed
me, man. The Dallas burn, baby. Now it's my turn. Yeah, I've been so high on Dallas, you guys, like third, fourth, like top team in the West. This year, I'm putting them 14th, and they are staying there because they are going to be bad this year. It's going to blow up in their face. putting all these pieces together doesn't make any sense to me. Lucho Acosta seems to be on his way out of the league, not into the league. I'm done with it. Dallas, you are my team that I'm going to target this year. Last year was Portland. It almost burned me last year, but I'm going Dallas this year. I just don't feel like it. I don't feel a good vibe. I'm not feeling it right now. So we'll see. I could be wrong. This could be one of the better teams in the Western Conference, but I was so tired of putting them in the top of the league that I just decided to put them way down the bottom, see what happens.
Okay, let's move on from Dallas. So this is probably the one time where I'm usually the downer on Dallas. I'm probably feeling a little higher about them than
they got rid of Luka. I mean, come on.
Let's talk about Houston Dynamo, which is the next team on the list here. They have lost Coco Carrasquilla. They lose Steve Clark, Sebastian Ferreira, Hector Herrera, gone. They bring in Jack McGlynn and Junior Urso. So their projected starting 11 here is Ponce up top, Ibrahim and Bassi on the sides, Kowalczyk in the midfield, McGlynn and Arter in the back midfield, Escobar, Stairs, Sivyachenko, and Dorsey in the back with Tarbell in goal. I see as high as 4th. I see as low as 14th. Some of these, it's so funny. They were 5th last year, 54 points under Ben Olsen. They did pretty good last year. They did lose a lot, though, so I feel like that is valid. How do you feel about Houston going into the season?
I think this speaks to kind of like the parity of the league, right? Like you and I talk about this all the time. I feel like we always have to do this precursor to a season. If you're just now getting into MLS, it's your first season, or you're like, this is it. I'm really just going all in on MLS this year. The reason why these predictions sound so crazy, Jordan, and they're usually not this crazy in other sports, is because of how unpredictable this league can be at times. And I think that's why the projections are so crazy. But losing Ache is huge for me. I feel like he didn't play a lot last year, but still, I mean, that's a top player in this league when he was healthy. And then they really didn't add much. I mean, McGlynn is really exciting because he's a great young player, and I think he can do things going forward. But besides him, I'm looking at this team going, I'm not really excited about a lot of these players. I think this could go bad for Houston, or this could be one of those teams, Jordan, that kind of hover around that playoff line. And that's kind of where I have them, is that like, there's nothing great about them. They're just going to kind of be serviceable in the Western Conference. And that's totally fine, because that's kind of the roster they built at this point. Like, there's nothing on that roster that really screams to me that they're going to be a top team in this league.
Let's talk about SKC. They lose Fontes. They lose Tim Melia, Alan Polito, Johnny Russell, Remy Walter, all gone. They bring in Manu Garcia, Dejan Jovic from LA Galaxy, and they bring in Sule Manov. So they had a lot of changes here. If we look at the projection, Jovic up top, Tommy on the left, Salaway on the right, Garcia, Rodriguez in the middle, Radoja in the mid defense, in Denby, Rosero, Fernandez, and Davis in the back, with Pulskamp as the goalkeeper. I see as high as 3rd. I see as low as 15th. That covers the wide range that people are picking. SKC, they finished 13th last year with 31 points, only 8 wins on the season. I feel like I would probably put them lower near the bottom here with all their changes and stuff. How do you feel about SKC going into 2025?
Yeah, I still feel like the back end of their roster just doesn't feel familiar at all. Like, their attacking players, fine. Like, they'll be able to score goals. Will they stop people from scoring on them? I have no idea. I just feel like that's a mess. Again, Jordan, I think they're kind of in, they didn't go hard reset, but I still feel like, I mean, that Jovic trade was kind of confusing to me, because I just thought they were going to blow it up completely. But getting him's kind of an indication of like, no, we'd still like to be competitive. Very strange to me. Very, very strange. But I have got no confidence in the direction they're going, and they're going to keep riding the coattails of Peter Vermees until that no longer is going to be an option. So until he retires, I don't think Peter's going anywhere. So I guess we're just going to see what happens. And this is going to be one of those really underperforming teams for the next 5 years. Book it, Jordan. They're like an 11th place team for the next 5 to 6 years.
Ooh, hope not. Let's go on to the LA Galaxy. They lose Brugman, they lose Mark Delgado, they lose Joveljic, and they lose Jalen Neal. But they bring in Sean Davis. They bring in Jorgensen, Christian Ramirez, and Lucas Sanabria. They bring in. Projection is Ramirez up top, Paintsill on the left, Peck on the right, Marco Royce in the middle, Sanabria and Cirillo in the middle defense. Then Nelson, Yoshida, Garcias, Yamane in the back with McCarthy as the goalkeeper. I see anywhere from 3rd to 5th. Those are like that's it. Most of them picked 3rd. Greg Vanney got them to 2nd in the West. So close to winning the West, actually. Now, of course, Ricky Puig is recovering from a torn ACL, so he is not in the projected starting 11. And then you also had Paintsill is hurt as we start the season. So that kind of played into it a bit on how I put the Galaxy. I think they'll have a slow start, but I think when like Paintsill and the team starts getting healthier, it'll even out and they'll be healthy again for the playoffs, except for Ricky Puig, I guess. But I don't like them moving on from Joveljic, actually, because I really liked him on the team. But, you know, they still do have like Paintsill and Peck and now Christian Ramirez. They have a pretty decent attack. So I'd say I feel pretty confident about them. It's just that the injuries right now is going to make them start a little slow, in my opinion.
Another team I doubted, and this one I've put up higher than I normally would. I think you make a good point, Jordan. I think that this could start very slow and even slower. There's a lot of rumors on X going around that Peck is also going to be bought by Atletico Madrid. So
Dang,
we'll see.
that'd be a blow.
Yeah, that would be a huge blow. I think it was Atletico Madrid, but it was one of the Atleticos over there that were coming in to buy him. I think it was like 16 million that they tried for him, and they're like, Galaxy's like, no, more. It sounds like it's going to happen because it sounds like one of those, no, we want more. Please, like, give us more and then we'll sell him, which would be a huge blow to LA Galaxy. If that happens, Jordan, yeah, like I'd be really concerned. And Ricky Puig, like being ACL injury last year, I don't think it was as intense. I think it was not as crazy, but still that recovery period for a soccer player is typically 9 to 12 months, depending. So I don't imagine he'll be back anytime soon at all. So he'll miss most of the season, I'd imagine. So probably looking at 10, 12 games maybe that he plays.
If anything,
Right.
Usually it is like a year. He got hurt in what, like the conference
November.
semi
Yeah.
or the conference final. So
Yep.
at that point, it's you're going. It's probably shot for most of the year.
I'd say probably 10 games, if that. So
if that, yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. But again, the Galaxy are one of those sneaky teams, Jordan, that most of you probably wouldn't have had them winning MLS Cup from last year. And they did it. They found out a way. So if there's a team out there that can figure out, I think it's Greg Vanney's LA Galaxy.
All right, LAFC across town here. Atuesta gone. Bogus gone. Campos gone. Murillo gone. Oliveira, right? Christian Oliveira. Okay. Eli Sanchez. Carlos Vela gone. Carlos Vela did not really do much after re-signing with them. But he's gone now. Mark Delgado in, Ibobasi in, Thiago Home in, Jesus in, Shmolikov in, Tafari in, Yaboa in. They've kind of restocked here. We have their projection as they have Olivier Giroud projected up top. With his age, I'd be actually shocked if he starts all the time. But Boanga on the left, Martinez on the right, Tillman and Delgado in the middle, Jesus as the defensive midfielder, Hollingshead, Long, Marlin, and then Palencia in the defense with Hugo Lloris in goal. They finished first in the West last year with 64 points, made it to the Western Conference semifinals. And I see predictions of first or second. That's it. That is, and that's kind of what it should be too. This is, if you're LAFC, if you're LA Galaxy, you should be predicted to finish in those top spots with how much that they've been spending, especially a team like LAFC. So, pressure's on. Pressure's on here because they started off slow last year. Then they overcame LA Galaxy on the last day of the season. And then they get to the semifinals of the conference semifinals. They'd been in MLS Cups like back to back at some point, right? It's getting close now for LAFC. They had lost a few trophies in a row. They won Open Cup. It's time to go back out there and mark your claim here on MLS. And I have them as finishing fairly high, and I have them as that option of I'll spoil it. I have them winning the Supporter Shield because this partly like you were saying about certain teams of, oh, if I overestimate, if I underestimate, right? With this team, I thought like I was kind of counting them out last year at a certain point, and I'm like, LA Galaxy should win the West. And LAFC out of nowhere comes and wins the West again and are constantly up there, constantly in finals. I think that there's no big down period. Even when they lose certain players, some of these players that they bring in, they brought in a lot. Like I'm feeling pretty good about LAFC going into the season. What say you?
I say that you're right. Like I think LAFC is cream of the crop. I think I don't have them as high as you do, but that's because I have another team higher that we're going to talk about because I like what they've done. But Jordan, like you look at their signings and like half of their signings are depth pieces. They're not even like starting pieces.
Yeah.
That's like Tafari, Yaboa. Those are really good defensive players that would start on most teams. They're both defensive depth pieces. Smolikov is depth piece, left back. Jesus is a starter. Holm, he's a depth piece. Abobasi, a depth piece, who I think, Jordan, you and I were really excited about. I think if you and I had to put like the most exciting player as far as the move for them is concerned, I think he'd be pretty high on the list. Like I feel like Jeremy Abobasi might actually find this might be a team that he just thrives in. And I know we've always said that about Abobasi, but I feel like this really could be a good situation for him. And then Mark Delgado, like that's a really nice starting piece. And to get him from El Trafico, like to be able to sign him from LA Galaxy over to LAFC, that's a lot of fun. So again, the rich just keep getting richer, Jordan. This is a good team.
Let's talk about a team that isn't a good team. Okay, Minnesota United. I'm a little worried about them going into the season. They lose Fragapane. They lose Timu Puki. They lose Tapias. They bring in Owen Jean. They bring in Jung. And they bring in Nicolas Romero. But that's really it. If you look at their attack, Aloese and Yaboa up top, Pereira, Lod in the midfield with Rosales, Trapp, and Halongwain in the defensive midfield spots with, Rosales and Halongwain being more like attacking backs. And then Diaz, Boxall, and Harvey in the midfield with St. Clair in goal. I see fourth place. No, I see third place and 13th place. That's the range here. Most people are picking them more in the fourth and fifth spot, but I don't know. I do fear for the loss of Fragapane, the loss of Timu Puki. Like these are players that really had an impact, and I worry that they're not going to be as good. Eric Ramsey returns in his second season here. They made it to the Western Conference semifinals last year after finishing 6th. I just don't know if I can put them in 6 or higher. But hey, maybe it's best if I doubt them because usually that happens to help teams.
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about them. They continue to struggle with midfield depth. Like I feel like they just don't get the. I mean, when you lose Emmanuel Reynoso, and he was such an integral part. And they've never recovered since then. It's been a couple years too, like that he's ever produced. So moving on from that, having that midfield depth and that piece where it just makes all of the difference. They don't have that, Jordan, and I fear that's where they're not as good as some of the other Western Conference teams. But I am still pretty high on them. I do feel like maybe some of these signings pan out, but I still feel like they're like one good signing away from being a really good team, I feel. So I guess it'll depend on what they do. But I'm a little higher on Minnesota United going into this year. So I'm excited to see what they do. I still feel like they got some young pieces that are really exciting too.
Portland Timbers. They finished 9th last year with 47 points, made it to the wild card. They have Phil Neville still as their manager. They lose Evander. They lose Eric Williamson. But they bring in David DaCosta, who is Evander's replacement. $6 million from RC Lens over in Ligue 1. Jim Rafori comes in. Kevin Kelsey comes in from Shakhtar Donetsk. And João Ortiz comes in. So the projected start 11 here is Mora up top, Rodriguez on the left, Moreno on the right, DaCosta in the midfield, Ayala and Ortiz in the defensive midfielders, with Fori, Miller, Zuparik, and Mosquera in the back, with Crepeau in goal. I see ranges from 7th to 12th. Oh, no, 14th. This is a team it's hard for me to figure out, right? Evander is gone. Now they're bringing in a player to replace him, but will he fit into MLS? Well, that's the question, right? How do they do when they are in this league? That's something to worry about. But on paper, it seems to be a little like a decent team, but I just worry that how that'll all go down this season. I don't have the biggest faith in Phil Neville and Portland.
Yeah, I will continue to just not have faith in Phil Neville. It seems to do well for me. Losing Evander's big. DaCosta, I don't think is on the level as Evander. I think Evander is actually better. Which, I think it kind of goes to their value on their market. Like I do. I just feel like Evander is like a budding young player, whereas I felt DaCosta is more of a player that they wanted to see more from in Ligue 1. So again, I could be wrong, but like you said, Jordan, I'd much rather take a player that's proven in this league, an MVP caliber player, than the guy that also has a nice pedigree, but is coming over from probably expectations that didn't quite pan out. So again, DaCosta could end up being pretty good in this league, but I'm not buying that Portland's going to be that good of a team this year.
All right, RSL. They've lost Chicho Arango, which was a club record signing in 2023. It's only 2 years later, by the way. He's traded for 1.4 million GAM and a roster spot to San Jose. Gavin Beavers is gone. Matt Crooks is gone. Anderson Julio is gone to Dallas. Marcelo Silva is gone. Key signings: Forster Ojago from Nashville SC. Rafael Cabral, Kobe Henry, Sam Junka, and Elias Manuel. I'm not high on RSL this season. I feel like they just Anderson Julio played well. I'm pretty sure he's the one that scored when we.
Oh yeah, he went on a bender
him, right?
scoring goals. Yeah,
he went
on a bender.
Chicho was the one that assisted it or whatever when we saw him in Philly, and losing both of them, and I was really just like, what are they doing when that trade with San Jose happened? Because I'm like, you just brought this guy over in 2023. So he had 2 seasons with them, 1.5, depending on when they signed him in 2023. But I don't understand it. I don't, and I don't think that they've adequately replaced him. So this was a team that was on pace, I think points per game, the best in the league when we saw them in April last year, and then they started falling apart, and then I guess they decided to blow it up. I don't understand this at all.
Yeah, this is confusing for me. Only because like you've got a really like you've got probably the best young player, young prospect in Diego Luna. So like then to just go and blow it up. I'm talking 41 goal contributions between Anderson Julio and Chicho. Like Jordan Chicho was on pace like when we saw him for MVP. Like the dude was on a stretch where he could have easily have won MVP had he kept going at the rate he was going. Like they were beating teams on the road like it was nobody's business. Like I think Jordan they had run 5 straight or something like that on the road when we saw them play. Um, it just they look like a good team, man. Like they look so good. And now, like Jordan, they're arguably one of the worst teams in the Western Conference, I think. Like there's no way to sugarcoat that. Like they lost so much. Like I don't know how you replace it. Like I don't get it. I don't understand. It's not like they're out of money. I don't understand. You're right. Like this is the most mind-boggling, I think, off season that a team had. Like if I had to put it up there, this would
Yeah.
probably be my number one.
Let's talk about Luca de la Torre and San Diego. As now we have Luca de la Torre, Anders Dreyer, Marcus Ingarvartsen, Chucky Lozano, Patty McNair, Andreas Reyes, Jeppy Tverskov, and Ani Valakari. These are the key additions to a team that did not exist before. As we have San Diego FC. Obviously, they've never been in the league, so we don't have anything of reference for last year. I see as high as 8th. I see as low as 15th for people to predict this. I don't really know what to think about San Diego. Um, for me, it's hard to see this being a St. Louis from a couple years ago and them like being very good in this league, in this conference in particular, but they do have some quality players. What are your thoughts about San Diego here?
Love Chucky Lozano, one of the more exciting players in MLS. Luca De La Torre, I think fans are going to love him. And a lot of people didn't really pay attention, especially if they didn't pay the U.S. men's national team. They don't know Luca. Luca is a phenomenal watch. I'm actually shocked he's back in MLS. That's a huge get for San Diego, and so is Chucky. They're two really great players, Jordan. But outside of that, I don't know enough about any of them. Like, I guess you could talk a little bit about Andres Reyes. Like he played for Red Bull, but he's an aging center back. I mean, he's not really anything to get too excited about. Other than that, I've got no idea how these other players fit. This is kind of one of those ones like St. Louis where you're going, this could work. This could be really bad. And then you've got the whispers of KDB coming over to San Diego, and he's looking more like he's going to sign an extension. So they'll have to look elsewhere. But yeah, I'm interested, Jordan. I think we're going to see more of like our typical expansion team where they're kind of hovering around that last place in the Western Conference, especially because Jordan, I think that a lot of the teams in the Western Conference got better.
Yeah. There'll be a question mark for sure. Let's talk about a team that really got better. San Jose Earthquakes, right? They bring in Bruce Arena as their manager. They finished 14th in the West. That was the bottom in the West because there was only 14 teams in the West. 21 points, 6 wins, 25 losses, 3 draws. And in comes Bruce Arena along with Chicho Arango, Ian Harks, Mark Anthony Kay, Joseph Martinez, Dave Romney. Now, they did lose some players. They lost Ibobasi, Jackson Yule, Okapo. But what they've gained is immense. If you projecting a lineup, it says Arango and Martinez up top with Lopez in the midfield, Costa, Kay, Harks, and Espinoza in the midfield with Romney, Wilson, and Mooney in the defense with Daniel in goal. I see ranges from 4th place to 13th. I would have to think they probably end up better than 13th with this squad and this manager. But what are your thoughts? How excited are you to see this team this weekend?
This is probably the team I'm looking forward to most, Jordan, just because I want to see it like on the field together.
Yeah.
Like people forget, like completely forget that Christian Espinoza is one of the top wingers in this league. Add Chicho Arango to that mix, he could easily be. This could be like a really solid duo. And then you add in the different players in and around them. Like, I really like what Bruce has already done. Jordan, this team's only going to get better in the next 2 transfer windows. I am so excited for San Jose and Earthquake fans, just because the Quakes, man, they've been through it. And I think they finally, Jordan, found the perfect mix. And I love seeing, like, as much as Bruce might be in trouble, I love seeing Bruce in the league. It's good for the league. Like, he's going to make San Jose better. And I'm in the boat with you. I think this is going to be one of the more exciting teams to watch this year.
Seattle Sounders. We only got 2 teams left: Seattle and St. Louis, and what?
3, Vancouver.
Vancouver. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
see their preview listed
I've
here.
got theirs, so I'll put it in the
chat. So we have Seattle lost Josh Intencio, Leo Chu, and Raul Ruidiaz, but they bring in Paul Arriola, Jesus Ferreira, Kim Ki-hee. Their projected starting 11 is Morris up top, De La Vega on the left, Rusnak in the middle, Vieira on the right, Vargas and Roldan in the defensive midfields with Nuhu, Reagan, Yaimar, and the other Roldan. On the defense with Stefan Fry. I see a lot of first and seconds. That's what it's going to be, right? They finished 4th last year. They made it to the Western Conference Final. They had 57 points. I feel really good about this team. I have them, spoiler alert, 2nd place in the West. I think that this is a rehauled team. I feel really good about Seattle. What say you?
This is the perfect rehaul, Jordan. This is what they needed to do a year ago. They could have done this. They probably could have done this maybe, they probably couldn't have done this because of the new trade and transfer kind of thing within the league. Like, it makes the league really exciting. I'm really excited to see Jesus Ferreira. Paul Arriola is not going to have to play every game, so that adds a healthy attacker because Paul will stay healthy if he doesn't have to play every game. I mean, it's going to be it's going to be a beat down in the Western Conference this year, Jordan. I'm really looking forward to it because this is a top team in the league. This is crazy that they put this team together.
Okay, sorry. It was taking a while to load that I unmuted. Okay, let's go to St. Louis. They finished, what did they finish last year? 12th. Did not qualify for the playoffs. They have Olaf Melberg coming in now. I see ranges from 4th place to 15th on predictions here. They've lost Thoresen was their key departure, and they bring in Baumgartel and Wallum. So this team is not that different from the team last year. I would probably equate that to being they're probably going to be a little lower, but I do see some people put them as high as 4th, which is mind-boggling. What do you think about St. Louis going into this season?
What's your quote? I want what they're having. Jordan, yeah. I realistically don't see another team that's worse than them. Like, I just don't see it. They were bad last year. I don't think they've added anything of interest this year.
What you're hoping, if you're putting them 4th or 5th, is that last year was the anomaly, and it's
not the year before.
But I don't know.
Nothing last year was like, oh yeah, like even their best players in Klaus didn't really stay healthy. Not really the output that Loven, like, I don't know, man. Like, they fired. Like, I just feel like it's kind of in a weird spot right now. I feel like they excelled in that first year, and that might hurt them a little bit because I'm not sold that this is a good team. They're still on the. I mean, this is pretty much the same roster. I don't see. I really don't see where it's getting any better. I don't.
Let's talk about Vancouver and wrap up our West here. We have Stuart Armstrong is gone, Fafa Picault is gone, Ryan Raposo is gone, Alessandro Schopf is gone. They bring in Jaden Nelson and Emmanuel Sabi. That's it. They finished 8th last year. I see a lot of people projecting them between 8th and 15th. I know we kind of pick on Vancouver a lot, but it's not looking good.
I like them. I always like them. I don't know. I don't feel like they're that bad. Like, I mean, I guess I'm looking at the.
Well, let's see. We can
like who's
we can
worse.
pivot over to this.
Let's do it. Is that mine?
Here? You have them 6.
Okay. Yeah. So Seattle 1st, LAFC 2nd, LA Galaxy 3rd, Rapids 4th, Minnesota 5th, Vancouver 6th, San Jose 7th, 8th in Houston, 9th Austin, Portland then 10th, 11th is SKC, 12th San Diego, RSL 13th, Dallas 14th. There you go, Dallas. And 15th, I've got St. Louis. I just don't see that many teams better than Vancouver. Like, as much as they haven't really added, they haven't technically subtracted except for Vanny and then also Caicedo. But like, those weren't like huge losses to them. I just don't feel like where they've gotten a whole lot worse. So
I have them 12th. So here's my West. I have LAFC first, Seattle second, Houston third. What was I smoking? We got San Jose fourth, Rapids in fifth, Galaxy sixth. I want to clarify this again. 6 for Galaxy is the thought that the injuries are going to hamper them a bit, but then they could go on a run in the playoffs. I have Dallas 7th. I'd probably bump them up now after a little bit more of this. Minnesota 8th, RSL 9th, Portland 10th, SKC 11th, Vancouver 12th, San Diego 13th, Austin 14th, St. Louis 15th. So we kind of agree with St. Louis being bottom. So let's talk it through the rest of the stuff here. So Supporter Shield, I had LAFC. You had Miami doing a repeat here, Miami, with their Supporter Shield. We had DC as our wooden spoon. Our MVP was Messi. Now, typically, I would pick one from the Supporter Shield team, but I feel like Messi is just still going to put out stats that are undeniable.
Oh, yeah. Unworldly. Yep.
Coaches of the year, I have Cherundolo, while you have Javier Mascherano. We have Messi as the Golden Boot. Again, with the stats, he's going to win MVP. He's going to have Golden Boot. It's kind of our thoughts here. And I have, well, let's start with you. You have Miami winning MLS Cup. I have the return of Atlanta United to glory, winning MLS Cup. I just think that is a team that, while it might take them a bit to gel, I think maybe by the time we get to playoffs and how they knocked off Miami last year, I think they might be able to do something like that again. And I also just think that they'll be at a level of playing at that point under Ronnie Dyla where they will be totally ready to maybe take that step and win it all. I don't know. Maybe I'm just high on Atlanta's supply, but I'm feeling pretty good about their team.
No, I think a great pick, honestly. If you're picking, I would say that's going to be most people's dark horse, would be Atlanta United, just because they've got the money, they've got the talent, they've got that, just like that fan base, that following. It's so hard to play in Atlanta. I think that's a good shout, Jordan. Like, I feel like the other ones are kind of obvious shouts, but that one's easily the biggest wild card. So I'm glad that you picked one, because we were kind of in that LAFC Miami trend.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you went outside of it, because I was like, okay, good. At least we have some. And MLS Cup is so hard to predict. Like,
it is.
Matt this year, Jordan, is like full-fledged into MLS. Like, he's really excited.
Okay. I saw his hat on his profile.
Yeah. So one of our good friends, or one of our best friends from the college program, is really getting into MLS, and he's just like, and there's a lot of friends that I have that are sports gamblers. Like, how do you predict MLS? I'm like, you don't. you just don't. Like, there are obvious matchups, but like, yeah, it is not easy to predict this league.
All right, let's talk about the schedule. We have games this week. We have some CCC, which was supposed to kick off with SKC Miami. That's postponed. But tomorrow, or the day you're listening to this, because I'm going to probably put it up on Tuesday, is Colorado and LAFC at 10 o'clock on FS2. Then on Wednesday, we have Antigua and Seattle at 8 o'clock on FS2. And then Montagua and Cincinnati at 10 o'clock on FS2. With Thursday, Saprissa and Vancouver at 8 o'clock in round 1 of the CCC. On Saturday, though, we have MLS action, and no team should be off because we now have an even number, which means 15 matches. We have Miami and NYCFC kicking it all off at 2:30 p.m. on Saturday, February 22nd. At 4:30, we have LAFC and Minnesota. That game is also on Fox. Then Atlanta, Montreal at 7:30. Cincinnati, New York Red Bulls. Columbus Crew and Chicago. The Greg Berhalter Bowl there. DC United and Toronto, Orlando, Philly. We are kicking off with a stateside soccer show derby there. Austin and Kansas City then kick off the 8:30 matches. Houston, Dallas, Nashville, New England, St. Louis, Colorado, and then the 10:30 matches: San Jose, RSL, Seattle versus Charlotte. Sunday, February 23rd, we have Portland and Vancouver. And then kicking off the first Sunday night soccer at 7 o'clock is LA Galaxy and San Diego FC. Some pretty good games here. It'll be really interesting to see Orlando open up at home against Philadelphia for our sakes. But I think if I'm picking a match that's really intriguing to me, it's San Jose RSL with Chicho Arango now in San Jose. Do you have a game you want to shout out here?
Yeah, look at us going three Western teams and one Eastern. I'm going with the next game on, or I guess the same time that night, Seattle and Charlotte. I'm looking forward to seeing what this Seattle team looks like because it'll look very different. And Charlotte, I think, is a pretty good team, Jordan. So we'll see how it pans out. Charlotte heading over to Seattle. That's kind of weird to open up the season, have an Eastern Conference team way over in Seattle, but I'm looking forward to that. So those 10:30 games, I'm going to have to turn those on Saturday night and check those out.
Yeah. Well, our long national nightmare of no Major League Soccer is over as it starts this weekend, and now my days will be filled once again with watching games all weekend long and maybe trying to get my son Landon, who's only 7 months, interested here in the beautiful game. So
he's excited. He told me.
He is, yeah. But that's it for us here. Right at the 2-hour mark here, we are wrapping it up. Thank you if you stuck along with us for the whole thing. Leave in the comments. Tell us how wrong we are about your team or about any team, which we probably are, except for maybe 2 teams. But yeah, so I'm really looking forward to that. We'll be back next week to talk about that first weekend action. Thank you all, and we'll catch you next time.